We have breaking news out of the Middle East. While we were on air not long ago, Israel has launched a new attack against Beirut, the capital city in Lebanon. And according to reports we've seen so far, the target of this attack was the Hezbollah headquarters, where Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, was believed to have been. According to some reports that are already coming out, he may have been killed in this strike. And in a lot of the aftermath and some of the videos that have been coming out already, a huge building looks like to have been absolutely leveled. Actually, it looks like portions of an entire block may have been just obliterated, where there was multiple missiles that struck. Now, this is really amazing because it's coming at a time when the Netanyahu had just been given a speech before the United Nations where he was talking really very oddly different than what was talked about here. Here's what Netanyahu said earlier today his focus was.
And here's the truth. Israel seeks peace. Israel yearns for peace. Israel has made peace and will make peace again.
And yet, while he was given that speech, the last stages of this plan were already in place, and for all we know, some of those missiles could already have been in the air. I'm not sure how long the time of flight was on those, but the timing is not it's not coincidental. Obviously, this was something that was planned, and so while Netanyahu is telling the world that they're seeking peace, they were actually seeking to decapitate the leader of Hezbollah. Now, listen, I don't know where you may be coming from on this, but some of the thought may be, hey, you take out the head of the snake and the body dies. That's not how it works, folks. Organizations like this, especially ones that have been in such conflict with Israel for such a long time, and in light of the fact that other leaders had just been assassinated in Beirut by Israel with missile strikes, of course, they know it's always possible for any of them to be hit. They definitely have a plan to transition to the next leader. That's what every organization of this type does. That's how they live. And here's the thing. You may think that by getting rid of this guy that somehow the organization will just collapse and die, or that somebody else will come in who's going to now fall to their knees and make peace with Israel. The history shows that the most likely course of action is that someone more antagonistic will come in. Hassan Nasrallah has been in place for many, many, many years. He was more a politician than a militant, so he was risk averse. He was very cautious in what he did, and so he was always careful not to escalate things too far. You may get somebody now who concludes there's no point in holding anything back because Israel is going to kill us all, and they're going to assassinate everyone, and they may be more provocative. So instead of causing the organization of Hezbollah to come down, Israel may inadvertently have caused it to rise up and be more unpredictable and more violent. Violence just always begets violence. It's incredibly rare when you can have one strike and then all of a sudden the other side backs down. It just almost never works that way. And there's no reason to think that it's going to in this one. And this has some negative overtones for the United States as well. So just moments ago, State Department spokesman Sabrina Singh was asked, hey, what about this strike and what did the United States know? Watch this.
Reports circulate about a strike in Lebanon. Secretary Austin spoke by phone earlier today to his Israeli counterpart, Minister Gallant. The United States was not involved in this operation, and we had no advanced warning. Minister Gallant spoke with Secretary Austin as the operation was already underway. This operation happened within the last few hours. We are still assessing the event and don't have any additional information or any further specifics to provide at this time. But with that, I'd be happy to take your question.
So that's a continuing theme where we didn't know. We didn't know about previous strikes as well. We didn't know about the pager event when that happened as well. But Israel keeps doing things. And by the way, even when these things happen and we say we didn't know and it's getting us by virtue of our support for them, it's also splashing on us. We give $8 billion, or maybe it was 8.7 billion. I can't remember the number. We just authorized another big tranche. And then as Netanyahu's talking about peace in New York, they're launching this big strike here. And again, we say we didn't know. Now, this is on top of something that new information is coming out even yesterday that's even more damning, because you may recall that we did a show about this 21-day ceasefire that the United States was trying to put out. Well, now then we are finding out, and again, this is Israeli public media here, is that the U.S. announced the Lebanon ceasefire initiative because Netanyahu told us he was on board. So Netanyahu is playing us like a cheap fiddle, and it's actually much more nefarious than that. He is absolutely using the United States to get everything done he wants, no consideration whatsoever given to us. You had the Vice President Kamala Harris, who's running for president, wants to succeed Joe Biden. She reiterated again, as Biden keeps doing, that we still want a two-state solution, and that has to be part of the. I mean, Netanyahu laughs at us, folks. It's time for us to wake up. We are being used, and it's embarrassing the way that this is going on, because we keep saying one thing. Netanyahu tells us something to our face and does something else behind our backs that again, and then comes back to us and says, give me more bombs, give me more money. And we do. And we do. So we are being played. It's in the open, and we still continue to play our role of doing whatever they ask for. It is humiliating. And this is almost certainly going to backfire. This has very little chance of producing anything good. And although we still don't know for sure that Nasrallah was killed, I'll just say that. This is initial reports. Some from on the ground are saying the we'll wait and see. It's the fog of war. It's always, the first reports are almost always wrong. We'll see how it plays out. But no matter how it plays out, you just had this massive explosion in the middle of the capital city of Lebanon, because Israel doesn't like this leader and they want to try and destroy him. I'm sure there's probably plenty of people that were killed in this, Hezbollah people, but because it's in the middle of the capital, there's also a lot of innocent people were again killed. And there just doesn't seem to be any concern at all for innocent people that get killed in the crossfire of this. And this is also going to come back to haunt. This is not making Israel look good in the world. It's not making them look stronger. It's making more people afraid of them. And when people get afraid of somebody, they very often will take action against them. We'll see how that's going to work out. Yeah, Gary's showing some of the scenes right here. Just imagine if you saw this in the capital city of any friendly country of ours that we're on board for. Let's say that Russia. What if Russia did something like that against a Ukrainian target in some other country, some other capital city, in a Western capital city? I mean, we would be just ready to go to nuclear war practically. But yet you see so far that there's no response and no reaction whatsoever. And because this is becoming normalized, we don't even seem to matter with it. I want to play a section here that we were just talking to Colonel Jacques Beau primarily about the Russia-Ukraine war. But since this actually came up in the middle of our show, we actually talked a section about this. And I thought it was really important and really insightful that some of the comments he has, because he has got a lot of history and knowledgeable about this region. And so I wanted to play that for you here. There was a massive explosion in Beirut just a little bit ago. And according to some reports that are coming out, there is the possibility that Hassan Nasrallah was actually killed. And apparently this was his headquarters where they think that he was stationed. And there are some rumors that he either was wounded or possibly even killed. We'll see. It's all breaking news right now. But what do you think happens with this here? Because it looks to me like Israel is already in the process with all these airstrikes and the pagers and the assassinations of the senior leaders, that they are already in the process of going in on the ground. They're just waiting to start. How do you see it?
Well, if Israel starts to have a ground operation on the southern Lebanon, this will happen as it did in 2006. The Hezbollah is a defensive, basically, it's a resistance organization in the true sense of the word, meaning that they are prepared for defense against a possible occupation, that the tunnels, trenches, blockhouses, and things like this. So, meaning that as it happened in 2006, if the Israeli comes into Lebanon, they will face a situation that will be probably even harsher than what they have found in Gaza. And since they were not very successful in Gaza, I suspect they might have also some kind of, you can call it probably defeat. I don't want to use these words because we don't know what will happen, but it might have, they might have very hard encounters with the Hezbollah. In addition to that, we have to remember that some Iraqi militias, Shia militias, because Iraq is essentially, I mean, has a very large Shia minority, they have claimed having 40,000 combatants ready to help the Hezbollah if Israel would enter South Lebanon. You have also Syrian militias have claimed they would come back and try to recover the Golan, because the Golan Heights are, in fact, from an international law point of view, it's still a Syrian territory. It's an occupied territory, it's a Syrian territory. And they will, the Syrian militias would take advantage of the incursion to trying to recover the Golan. Meaning that, again, I cannot anticipate what the outcome of the operation could be, but I think Israel will have a very, very hard time in southern Lebanon, because the Hezbollah, don't forget that Hezbollah has been fighting the ISIS in Syria. They are very much battle hardened. They have a command and control structure that allow them to conduct operations, even if they don't have, they're not very strong in terms of armored vehicles, and they're not prepared for maneuver warfare. But when it comes to defensive warfare based on static installation and tunnels, exactly what we have seen in Gaza, I think they are very strong. And my view is that Israel might have a very hard time. Some say that if Israel enters South Lebanon, that could be the end point for Israel. I'm not that pessimistic because the resources of Israel are quite important, but they will certainly lose a lot of political and military prestige in such operation, in my view.
And now it seems to, my assessment is that unless the United States gets sucked in and goes in and fights with Israel, I think that the stated objective, which from a number of Israeli leaders has been specifically to push Hezbollah back to the Litani River, which is like 25 kilometers or so, depending on where you measure it. That just seems like an incredibly difficult military task with the current size of the IDF, when they haven't been able to completely vanquish Hamas in 11 months in the relatively tiny Gaza Strip.
I fully agree with you, and I wondered if that is even possible. The Israelis never managed to have full control of the South Lebanon. In fact, they never managed that. In fact, even because of their presence, Hezbollah was created.
Right.
So meaning that they never managed to have any control of South Lebanon. As of today, the buffer zone is in fact on Israeli territory, because Israelis had to withdraw civilians from the border area. And in fact, Hezbollah has managed to create some kind of buffer zone on Israeli territory, if you want. So meaning that it will certainly be very, very hard and very similar to what we have seen in Gaza, with a lot of destruction. And remember that in 2006, Israel made also a lot of destructions in South Lebanon. And that was even condemned by the international community. That will probably be even tougher this time. And the problem is that in this context, you might have the US coming along, but I don't see the US putting really boots on the ground. I don't know, but I don't know what is the status of planning. My personal view is that if the US would be involved, that's probably with the air war. I mean, kind of airstrikes, anti-missile things, and this kind of thing. But I'm not sure the Pentagon is ready to really put units on the ground. Probably,
I'm sure they're not. Definitely, the American people are not. But
exactly.
but this may be another one of those situations that is divorced from reality. So we'll see how this plays out.
That's true. We remember that in Ukraine, in fact, the only red lines that were crossed by the West. I mean, these were Western red lines that were crossed by the West. Right. The only red line that the Russians, in fact, defined was the question of the long-range strikes, and long-range missiles. But for the rest, all the other red lines, like, remember that we talked about the equipment end of 2022. Remember that the U.S., the Biden was not so keen providing M1 Abrams to the Ukrainians, and the UK came first, saying that they would provide a Challenger 2, and then Joe Biden changed his mind and then came along. Yeah. So we might have this kind of behavior also for Israel, but the situation is also a little bit different, because the kind of warfare which could be waged in South Lebanon is much harder somehow, and I'm not sure that the U.S. Let's say population is ready to accept. Yeah,
I'm sure they're not, actually, but we'll see if the politicians catch up to our population very soon. Be sure to share it with your friends so that other people can benefit from this, even if they can't watch a video. Thank you very much, and we will see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.